Freediving is one of the world's most hazardous games since it depends on a jumper's capacity to pause their breathing for numerous minutes as they swim to extraordinary profundities and back up to the surface. Brought up close to Dublin, Ireland, Stephen Keenan found an affection with the expectation of complimentary jumping back in 2009 when he found the game while an extended getaway in Dahab, Egypt. Inside a couple of years, he migrated to Dahab, where there was a flourishing freediving local area, learned Arabic, turned into a freediving teacher, and prepared many understudies. In 2015, Stephen helped to establish Dahab Freedivers with Spain's Miguel Lozano, one of the most profound free jumpers on the planet, and Swiss free jumper Pascal Berger. That very year, Stephen would record his best plunge with a monofin to 267 FT, 81 m, profound, a profundity quite a ways past the scope of most scuba jumpers. Stephen's freediving shop was found near the famous jumping region known as the Blue Opening, and nicknamed the Jumper's Graveyard, on account of the great number of plunging passings that have happened there. This notable sinkhole is around 394 FT, 120 m, profound. The sinkhole prompts a curve that sport members frequently attempt to reach. In 2017, Italian free jumper Alessia Zecchini came to plunge at Dahab Freedivers. She knew Stephen from already meeting him at the Upward Blue freediving rivalry, where he was a well-being boss, and they fostered a nearby bond and turned out to be sincerely involved. By then, Stephen had turned into a profoundly regarded well-being jumper and mentor. Well-being jumpers screen the security of free jumpers as they climb prior to arriving at the sea's surface when they're at the most elevated hazard of shutting down because of oxygen hardship to the mind. Alicia needed to cross a submerged region of the Blue Opening called the Curve. The Curve is a 85-foot, 26 m, redstone passage set at around 180 FT profound. Alessia needed to cross this curve on a solitary breath. Stephen was her mentor at that point and coordinated the entire thing. He had coordinated intersections of the curve commonly, and he had previously crossed it himself. He set up a group. They practiced everything. It was all exceptionally arranged. Alessia would plunge down into the Blue Opening without the help of a monofin or any blades so far as that is concerned. She would then swim evenly under the site's well-known submerged curve, and afterward out the opposite side, where Stephen would be holding up at a profundity of 164 FT 50 m to direct her to the surface. Freediving occasions are difficult to pull off without crafted by a devoted group of 4 to 5 well-being jumpers. Plunging is seldom the issue, it's the rising. As contenders attempt to re-emerge in the wake of being lowered for all the more so lengthy, the fractional strain of oxygen starts to plunge in their circulatory system, jeopardizing them for a power outage. The occasion occurred on July 22, 2017. That day, perceivability wasn't great, and the breezes were sufficiently high, around 20 miles each hour, that they were pushing the water around, making flows that could push a free jumper off base. Be that as it may, Alessia persevered. She dove down into the Blue Opening fine and dandy, according to plan. Then, at that point, she began crossing under the curve. Under there were 2 tech jumpers that were recording her. Stephen had told her that the tech jumpers would be to her left side, so she ought to attempt to swim near the reef wall to her right side, so she wouldn't find them. Alessia adhered to these directions. Nonetheless, she saw no difference in light when she energized the curve, so she continued to follow the reef wall on her right side, making her swim a little ways from the float with a rope at the leave that was on her left side. She was adversely light, on the grounds that the curve is so where it counts. This made her swim somewhat quicker than what the security group had reenacted during their practices in the Narrows. Alessia left the curve quicker than arranged. The leave guide rope was kept up with setup by one individual, and the rope was solidly in the center of the exit of the curve. Stephen was the principal well-being. Stephen was freediving down and should be there when Alessia would leave the curve on the off chance that she didn't see the rope or should have been accompanied to it. So he should be there a couple of moments ahead of time. He was then expected to provide the rope with 2 or 3 in number pools, indicating to someone else on a superficial level that they were beginning the climb. Someone else would have been the second security at around 80 ft 25 m, profound. Furthermore, there would have been a third security at around 50 to 65 ft 15 to 20 m, profound. Upon a sign that Alessia had entered the curve, one individual in the security group, named Lily Crespi, was giving a commencement to Stephen on when he ought to begin his plunge. At the point when Lily Crespi gave Stephen the commencement, he advised her to give him 10 additional seconds inexplicably. So Stephen went down and he was 10 seconds late, joined with Alessia being a piece early. When he showed up at 164 ftf, 50 m, profound, Alessia was very far away from the rope, so he hustled to her. The recording is on record from the other tech jumpers. At the point when Stephen found Alessia, they lacked opportunity and willpower to get back to the rope and began to climb. Alessia was swimming without any balances, and Stephen, who had blades, was following her up. During the initial segment of the climb, Alessia was swimming without anyone else, and Stephen was following her to accompany her to the surface. Towards the last piece of the rising, Stephen helped Alessia out by getting her hips and assisting her with swimming up to the surface. It is believed that Alessia showed up to the surface still cognizant, however, a piece hypoxic and out of it. During the entire swim back up, the current had pushed them extremely far away. They wound up at a shallow segment called the seat. In the wake of collecting herself, Alessia understood that Stephen was face down on a superficial level, not moving and not relaxing. He had surrendered to an in-water power outage as he moved toward the last 30 ft 8 nm of the rising. Alessia responded and turned him around. Then, at that point, began calling for help. Yet, since they were so distant from the arranged appearance spot, it took for a little while for them to be taken note. At long last, the group of individuals who were inside the blue opening toward the beginning of the jump showed up first and began to swim back to shore with the oblivious Stephen. They attempted to give him salvage breaths in the water en route to shore. On shore, CPR was performed. At that point, ambulances were not permitted to go the whole way to the blue opening and stand by there. They needed to place Stephen in a taxi and carry the taxi to where the emergency vehicle was. Then, at that point, at only 39 years of age, Stephen unfortunately passed on while in the rescue vehicle to the clinic. A Netflix narrative on Alessia and Stephen was as of late delivered, called The Most Profound Breath. Regardless of this occurrence, Alessia Zecchini keeps on functioning as an expert free jumper and contends in various worldwide contests every year.